Hey everyone, long time no see again. It seems like every time I make one of these videos, I start off by saying, yeah, I'll upload more frequently, and then like 4 weeks goes by. So I won't be doing that anymore. When I upload is when I upload. Life, I always think it's going to calm down. It's going to be less busy, but it never is. So we'll just take things as they come. So basically what I wanted to do with this video is kind of get back into some of those promises that I have made before, and finish, or at least get through some more of your AMA questions. So I have about 20 more of those to be able to read off and give you answers, because again, this channel is really meant to be about you guys getting to know me interacting with you, and just kind of having a fun, casual time, and talking about pretty much whatever. But a few quick updates before that. First, I want to say thank you guys so much for the response to the Attack on Titan video. During that video, I had like a kind of a joke where I said, you know, no one wants to watch 2 hours of me talking about something. And everyone, literally like newcomers too to the channel and people who had been there for a while, basically said like, no, we'd totally watch a 2-hour video. What are you talking about? And that was really nice. That really touched me. And I won't say that a 2-hour video is coming, but hearing that you guys are, you know, interested in that kind of content and would want to be able to see that, that's definitely good to know, and it's inspiring. A 2-hour video is a ton of work, and you know, that's something else to consider, which is why I'm telling you not to maybe hold your breath. But it's good to know anyway that there was just so much love for that kind of idea. And so thank you guys for that, because the Attack on Titan video, that was a lot of work. That was a lot of clips that needed to be recorded. And I'm happy you guys liked it. I got a really good response. So things that I've been into and things that I might make videos on. I have a video idea for Davy Jones. I basically rewatched the last two good Pirates of the Caribbean movies, number 2 and number 3. And honestly, even good can be put in quotation marks, because those movies are not highly respected. Even though I really enjoyed them, and I thought about, you know, it'd be really cool to like dive into Davy Jones in how the writers used allegory to kind of really save those 2 movies, because there's not much else in there that's really redeemable. So that's an option for a video going forward. I've had this Queen's Gambit video idea stuck in my head for literally months, so that may be a thing that happens in the future. For some reason, I've been very interested in looking at the editing behind Darth Jar Jar. The idea that Jar Jar is a Sith Lord, because I think George Lucas, there's a bit of evidence to suggest that he did want to go that route, but then was ultimately kind of persuaded not to because of the reception around Jar Jar just as a character. But I think that comes down to editing, and that might be an interesting take to be able to put into a video. So we'll see. And speaking about that, just so you guys know, the reason why I consistently, every time I say, oh yeah, I'm going to upload more, I haven't been uploading as frequently, is because of obviously me being in a master's program, me having my other job, so the editing job, and just, you know, other stuff going on in life. So that really will all tone down around October. That's when I graduate, and I'll basically be getting 20 hours of my life back. So if you guys see a shift in the length of videos on my main channel, that's a lot of what I'm doing is I think I'm going to adapt to the squeeze that I'm in as far as the time constraints. Because ever since I started like the internship, the practicum portion of my master's, which was last October, I'm swamped. And so that's why, you know, putting out one video in January, which was the Attack on Titan video, that never happens for me. I almost always upload 2 videos, but it's just, there's just so much going on, right? Especially, you know, with COVID. So I might upload more videos, but they'll just be a bit shorter in length. I'm still going to try to be as educational as possible, right? I still have my own personal standards that I hold myself to. But if you guys see a difference in the length of the videos, and possibly even more personal reviews type happening, again, with the backdrop of everything being to educate writers and people who are interested in the craft or just what goes on in their fictions, that might be happening. And I might make a mention of that on the main channel too. So just want to let you guys know that. And then, oh, also the last thing I guess is I binged all of what is available for WandaVision, and I've described it to my friends as Marvel for crackheads, but in a good way, because, oh my gosh, I cannot even begin to predict anything that is going to happen in that show. It is off the walls, completely, like one scene to the next, never know what's going to happen, and honestly, I really like it. I am really surprised they went the direction they did without giving any spoilers. It's kind of dark, and that's my big thing. As you guys have probably known, I like dark fiction. So if that's the direction they're going to be taking these other Marvel movies and these TV shows, I'm for it. Go for it. That sounds like a pretty nice time. So I'll continue to watch WandaVision. Maybe even get into some other things that Disney Plus has. Maybe a video on that will be coming. I don't know. No promises. But just want to let you guys know. If you've seen WandaVision, talk about it in the comments. I'll try to get back to you on that. Because it's an interesting show. So with that, all being said, we can actually get into the AMA now. So Kenneth J asks, what are your favorite and least favorite tropes? That is a great question. Honestly, I don't know. My favorite trope. Let's start with favorite trope. Even though I don't even know if this is a trope, but the sympathetic villain. I mean, there definitely are times and places for your villain to not be sympathetic, right? Like if that's what your narrative needs. And I think some villains actually work better not being sympathetic. But I guess like my favorite trope is kind of agreeing with the villain. And again, I don't even know if this is a trope so much as maybe just good writing. But learning in like the third act or the middle of like the second act that the villain is, really hurt themselves and they're trying to overcome things, and then they're hero in their own story, right? The villain thinks that they're right. When done really well, I think that's the key to like a really solid character. But again, that might be too general if you're talking about like tropes. I actually am super into the powerful old man in anime. So think of like Yamamoto from Bleach, or Master Roshi from Dragon Ball, or even like Shinigami from Soul Eater, right? So there's like that powerful like mentor leader character, and I'm a sucker for that. Like literally, if you have that in your show or your fiction, and you have that kind of like pinnacle power character, even though it's super hardcore trope, I'm into that. Worst trope, or my least favorite trope, I do not like the whole turn your villain into a pawn in the last second trope. A la how Bane happened with Talia al Ghul at the end of Dark Knight Rises. Sorry for spoilers if you haven't seen that, like, I think it's like an 8-year-old movie now, maybe more. There's some other stories where you learn at the very end that the villain was actually not the villain. And that they were actually controlled by another villain. Again, it can work. It's just very difficult, and when that happens, I'm just like, oh gosh, what a waste of a character. So I hope that answers your question. Captain Deadpool asks how to make a story more than just scenes after scenes, but also art, and make the audience feel. Okay, well, so this is kind of a loaded question, because you're basically asking like, how do I write a good story? If you want to make your audience feel, I feel like there's very much a necessity to just have a central kind of like a message or an idea that your story and your narrative is leading towards, that someone could see relating to, their own life, right? The best stories are about the human heart in conflict with itself. So you could just have, scene after scene of people fighting, or, car chases, or action and events, but really what you're looking for is for those scenes of action to have consequences for the people that are involved in them. You want your events to directly relate to furthering that message you want in your story, right? The best stories, while kind of being over the top with some of the things depicted, Breaking Bad, the Godfather, Count of Monte Cristo. They're not about, being a drug kingpin or being a criminal mastermind or being, somewhat obsessed with, like revenge. They're about the people and how they change and how they adapt, in who they become because of the events, right? So everything that they do, the sequences and the scenes come together to build up them as characters. And it makes it feel like a whole complete story. And because we see them as people and not these, and not drug dealers or criminal masterminds, things that we can never be, we see them as people. That helps us to then feel for that character because we can relate to their humanity, even if we can't relate to the extraordinary circumstances that they've been in. So if you're writing a story, if you feel that that's maybe your struggle, really look deep and see what is it that I'm trying to convey to the person reading this? How am I going to reach out to them in their heart? And kind of bring them on this story of telling a story about a person and how this person is struggling. So that would be kind of my best answer to that. Christina Alvarez asks, what are some tips for separating yourself from your characters? I find it hard as the story progresses not to unconsciously make them do what I'd say, do what I do, etc. So this is a very good question. The cop-out answer is you get better at it as you practice and as time goes on. But I think also another way to kind of separate yourself from your characters is always keep in mind what their motivations are and what they want. It is impossible to not have a character in some form or fashion sound like you or react like you because you can only write you. There's no way to do it. You are the funnel for all the characters. It's just you being put through a kaleidoscope and being kind of like shown in a different light through the characters that you're writing, right? So by definition, you're always going to have a little bit of you in the characters and how they react. But what you can do is cut yourself off from having your characters always react like you by keeping in mind their characteristics, their goals, their conflict, right? So if I'm writing a character who really wants to take revenge on another character, and I've already set up that this character, let's just say they are very violent, they have no remorse, and they want to make this other character who they want revenge on feel as much pain as possible, right? Well, that's not me. I'm not going to go out and, saw somebody's legs off and laugh in their face while they do it. But if you think about how that character would approach a situation, since you understand their motivations, since you understand the differences that they have in you, really thinking about, okay, how would all the things that I've set up for this character, how would that influence them to behave in a situation different than me? And even though that was an extreme example, you could definitely have even, minor characters. If I'm writing a character that's just a 25-year-old dude who lives by himself, and that's very close to how I'm basically doing right now. If I have that, I could still create different scenarios and circumstances that have led him to that point to where we would act differently. And keeping those differentiators in mind can help with creating dialogue, can help with thinking about how would a person who has gone through these events that are different look and react to the events that I have planned. I know it's kind of a long answer and it doesn't give too much information, but this is a nuanced kind of response. So it's very much kind of like in your hands to dissect your character, to know and to always be thinking really deeply within yourself, what can I do to make this character behave in a way that is true to them? Because you're the expert on your character, so you would know best. Swastik Sahu asks, would you prefer a character-driven or plot-driven story? That really depends. It really, there's no one or the other. I think some plot-driven stories, the plot almost becomes a character in and of itself, which kind of sounds like a cop-out. It sounds like I'm saying I'd like a character-driven story. But some plots can be so good that you'd still come away with it really impressed by what's happening. I think generally I would like a character-driven story, but it's not a necessity. I think it really depends, because the execution of a character-driven story, I believe, is easier, but a plot-driven story can still be really awesome. Valeria Escoto asks, Who's your favorite fictional character and why? Okay, Valeria, this is super difficult for me. It's really hard. Off the top of my head, which is probably the most honest answer, it's probably Liara T'Soni from the Mass Effect series. She was probably the character that I went through. I had never played a game like Mass Effect before where you could make your own choices. So going through that experience of being able to talk to different characters and kind of like decide their fates and growing with them, Liara was the character that I felt I'd grown the closest to in Mass Effect. And she was so fleshed out, and I just really vibe with her and everything that she became in the later games. There's also Miranda Priestley from The Devil Wears Prada. Absolutely love that character. She's fantastic. I really want to make a video about her. We'll see in the future. Of course, there's Olenna Tyrell and Tywin Lannister both being like really up there. Gus Fring from Breaking Bad, Dr. Manhattan, Psycho Bushuzima from High School of the Dead. Gosh, I mean, and I know I've listed off like 7 characters. Azula is great. I don't know, it's really hard. I can't give like a definitive answer, but if you're gonna take one, take Liara T'Soni. I think that would be my go-to. CM asks, in your opinion, what's the long-term viability of the book as a medium, or the book industry as a whole? Also, what's your perspective on changing directors midway through a project or series? So books, if you literally are asking about like how I feel about physical hard copy books, then I guess they're going downhill. But if you're asking about like stories as far as like written work, juxtaposed against movies or TV or video games, they're not going anywhere. Like that's I'm almost 100% certain that like ebooks and whatnot, that's gonna be relevant forever. There's no way to replace that. Physical books, yeah, maybe those will go the way of the dinosaur. But books as a whole, like that kind of written storytelling aspect, no, that's here to stay. Changing directors, there's no problem with changing directors. It's just super freaking difficult. I don't think there's a lot of movie series that have been successful in maintaining their quality while changing directors midway through, just because it's very hard to maintain a consistent kind of like narrative when you change the creators. Because again, a fiction is only known in its deepest form by its creator. So bringing in somebody else that's already working on an established fiction, it's very difficult for them to be able to ride that to the right direction. Of course, the more skilled you are as a creator, the better you're going to be able to adapt to somebody else's work. But bringing in a different director, it can work. It's just super difficult. So I wouldn't recommend it. Diego Teresina asks, how do you start knowing about principles of writing? Maybe it was different for me, but I dived into writing much before knowing about its tools. No, I think that's pretty much everybody. I don't think really anyone, well, maybe they do, but I would be surprised if people got into writing rules and tools and techniques before they got into writing itself. I think it's very much of a process where you learn writing as you are also writing. I just constantly read. While I was in college, I was in creative writing courses. I consumed literally like anything I could find online or just books that I could find about the craft of writing. I listened to other, more knowledgeable people about writing. But it was definitely something that I got into after. Like my first book was horrible. It was absolutely dreadful because I didn't know anything about writing. So I think you're very much in the same position. But it's just talking to other people. It's about, like I said, reading everything that you can, discerning what critiques are good versus what critiques maybe are more personalized and don't hold a lot of merit. I could go on and on and on, but it's something that I think that you learn more about the writing after having started rather than diving in before. Hippo the Hippo, which is an amazing username, they ask, what's the most important piece of advice you'd give to new authors looking to interact with the publishing industry for the first time? So I might have talked about this already, but it's perseverance. It's do not give up. You are going to get rejections after rejections after rejections, and it's all about just continuing to get better. It's about continuing to put your work out there and having a resolution to get better all the time, because you're going to get smacked down a lot. You're going to hear a lot of bad criticism. You're going to hear a lot of harsh criticism. But it's about staying basically with it as long as you love it, right? Never be in a position where you're forcing yourself to write because you feel like it's what you should be doing. It should always be a love. It should always be a passion. I write and I do videos because I like it, not because I get paid. It's awesome that I get paid, but it's not why I do these things. So if you're interacting with the publishing industry, just know that like it's an uphill battle. It's very much, it's months and months, if not years and years of being told no, of being told you're not good enough. But just always remember, like, you can improve and you can get to that point where somebody is going to want you. So just stick to it. Eric Thompson asks, can someone use a story structure for a scene? If so, which? So yeah, this is completely doable. I talk about this in a few dialogue dives. In fact, probably every dialogue dive. If it's like a 3-act structure, if it's a 4-act structure, 5-act structure, there's 10-act structures. You basically just put your scene in the same position as you would a complete story, right? So you have your introduction, where you establish the characters, you know, what they want, what's keeping them from getting what they want. You have your midsection, which, you know, is the rising action, the characters going back and forth together over the events of what's happening. Then you have like your climax, which is the greatest moment of conflict for your characters with the stakes at the highest. And then you have like a resolution, which is where possibly one of the characters gets what they want. So, I mean, that's how I approach every scene, right? Not in that exact 3-act structure, but thinking about scenes as stories unto themselves. Because scenes are kind of like short stories. So you could definitely apply. And like I said, there's all different types of story structures outside of just like the act structures, right? There's rags to riches, there's retention of power, there's corruption and, you know, fall. Like and all of those things can be put into scenes, because scenes are just smaller stories. Dylan Rudolph asks, which movie / book, etc. has your favorite unobvious subplot, something that was definitely there, but a large majority of people miss it, and how did they do it well compared to others? So, I wish I had more time to think about this, because I'm sure there are some subplots that are like really, really awesome that I really love that I can't recall right now. But I think something surprisingly that comes to mind first is actually Moana. And this is my headcanon in me looking at it as an editor, and I 100% believe this is true without any outside evidence of someone in the movie actually telling me about it. But and sorry if you don't want spoilers for Moana, just turn away now. But when Moana initially gets the heart of Te Fiti, or the stone, it's at the beginning of the movie. She gets it from her grandmother, and that's like the inciting incident that sets her on her journey. And of course she learns like, oh, this stone has like mythical powers and all that. Her grandma just dies after, you know, she gives Moana the stone, and she talked to the grandma. Her grandma's like, yeah, you need to go out and you need to do this mission. You need to find yourself. You need to be who you want to be. And her grandma passes away, and she turns into a spirit. And in the moment in the movie, you think like, oh, okay, this is simply supposed to be the thing that really gets her going. But in my headcanon, it's pretty established that the stone is kind of like life-giving. That's the whole point of Moana trying to get it to Te Fiti, I'm pretty sure. And it's really dark understanding if you take that Moana's grandmother was being kept alive by the stone. And knowing that she would die, she gave it to Moana. And she died literally almost immediately after that, because she understood it was important for Moana to go on this journey, right? And the movie, I don't think, ever explains this. I don't even know if it tries to make it explicit. I haven't heard it talked about too much, but I'm almost positive that Moana's grandmother was being kept alive by the stone, knew that it was important for her granddaughter to take this journey, and was willing to die to put the wheels into motion. So that's off the top of my head, even though that's, again, I'm not certain about that being a subplot. I would say that's one of my favorite. Also, everything in Avatar, The Last Airbender, like there are so many subplots in Avatar, The Last Airbender, I really can't get into all of them, but just the whole thing with Zuko's mom, and the murder in Iroh's son and everything like that. Like there's and those are kind of like focused on, but not a lot. But those are some of my favorite because like the whole framework of both Moana and Avatar is children's shows. And if you know Throwback Breakdown, my series, you know I love darkness in children's shows because it's very difficult to pull off. So those would be kind of like my answers to that question of subplots. And I think they're done very well. I think, honestly, the subplot for Moana is more impactful to me than what happens in Moana. So I would say they're done pretty good. Andrew Jarrett asks, are there any plans to continue the A Heart of Woe story? Are there any more of your books we can read? So in case you guys don't know, what he's referencing is the A Heart of Woe story that I wrote and put on Amazon like years ago. So very good news, yes. So hopefully this month, fingers crossed, A Heart of Woe and then A Heart of Woe Book 2, which is the sequel, will be out on my website to read. I'm going to try desperately to have all of my books out this year for you guys to read. I'm currently working on my 6th and my 7th book. So the 5 that I have finished, I want to be able to put out on my website. So you guys will be able to read those. Again, fingers crossed, I have to get kind of like the book covers finished and continue kind of like proofreading and editing. But they, with all intent behind doing it, they will be out. So you get to read all of my work. So again, I'm excited for that and fingers crossed. Konda Papa asks, I know you get this question a lot, but what is your favorite video making tools? I don't get this question a lot, but so they ask about software, microphone, and brainstorming video ideas. To keep this very short, I just use Adobe Premiere Pro for my video editing. I have a Rode podcaster mic, but I don't actually use that too much. This is called the Mayona mic. It's like $49 and it was really good. I had a Rode shotgun mic that I used to use. I don't use it anymore, but it's still a very good mic. And I bought like an Alienware computer to be able to edit on. I have a Republic of Gamers laptop that I do my video editing on. And for video research, I basically just use the internet. A lot of IMDb, trivia, kind of like sections, listening to interviews. It's a lot of research as if you're doing like a research paper, but I just do it for videos. So that's kind of like my list of, and of course using my own knowledge of editing and whatnot. So that's what I use to make videos. Pat Marie asks, are there any animated works, shows, or movies, new or old, that you found influential or meaningful to you? So yeah, I just named off a few even before this. Maybe the most influential, let me see. I don't know, that's really hard. I know that Adventure Time for a very long while was my favorite animated show ever, and it was because when I was watching it, there was just a lot going on in my life, and I really, really, really kind of like felt safe and comforted by watching that show. So I feel like that had a really big influence on me. So I'll go with Adventure Time. That's a safe bet. So I hope I say this right. SM Mbiwe asks, how do you stay on track on a goal? How did you get the insight you have as an editor and a content creator? So it's two kind of questions. So staying on track with a goal, it's just about discipline. It's about being able to say no to certain things and yes to others. It's about doing work, not every day, but consistently, because there are going to be things that tempt you to stop. And you have to realize that, like, I have to give up certain things to be able to achieve what I want. And it's not always going to be fun. It should always be what you want to do, but it might not be what you want to do in the moment. So just keep that in mind, because sticking to a goal is really about consistency and just in not allowing the things to distract you. And figuring out if this is what you really want, because some people think that they want something and they really don't. So being true to yourself and staying committed. That's really like 99% of sticking to a goal. The other part of the question, how did you get the insights you did as an editor and content creator? Trial and error, a lot of trial and error. I was really bad. If you watch my first videos, they are not edited well. It's about the freedom to make mistakes and to learn what to look at to get better, learn what you really don't like about what you're doing, and like what things can I do to make those things that I don't like into strengths. Be honest with yourself. Do not have an inflated ego, because if you have a big ego, you're not going to want to learn what things you're doing wrong. Always being inquisitive, never getting, like in a safe space where you feel like, oh, I don't have to improve. Always be improving. And then that was like my mindset all these years. I'm not afraid to admit that I was bad, or that, I didn't have skills, because like that means now I look back and I am better, which helps me. I feel like that builds confidence in a way that people might not even think about. NASA Peyton asks, what are your thoughts on the current direction the superhero genre is going? I don't know. I am really kind of, if anything, it's going well. Granted, it's kind of like a curved grading scale, because previously superhero movies were utter trash. Like between 2000 and 2008, there was just that time where like not much was good at all. And now superhero movies consistently are at least decent. Of course, they can be cookie cutter, but I think that really allows for people like, Taika Waititi to come in and kind of mix things up. Like Thor Ragnarok is probably one of my favorite superhero movies like ever. It's up there with like, Black Panther. I'm gonna count Scott Pilgrim versus the World as a superhero movie, even though it's objectively not. It basically functions as a superhero movie. But those kind of films that can be kind of out there, and even though there's that norm that's kind of been created, like WandaVision, things that subvert the norms, I think now have given kind of like a different feel and texture to the superhero genre that we didn't know could be there. So I think it's in good hands. Of course, there's still like the occasional film that's just explosions and cliched villains, but hopefully we're moving away from that. Fiona Lovecraft asks, what's your stance on death of the author? Does it change if the author is actually dead? No. If the author is actually dead, I don't think that matters much, just off the top of my head. But I'm a huge proponent of death of the author, because I think it is very important for a person to be able to remove themselves from the fictions, to not be gods of their own fiction, because I think in a sense that kind of diminishes the fiction. I think if an author is able to say, wow, you know what, this person's interpretation is different than what I intended, but that doesn't make it wrong, that's the death of the author. Because when an author can tell you, no, you read this wrong, I think that really negates the fiction being as much as it can be. Because we can't do that with real life, so why would we do that with fiction, right? If fiction is supposed to be the human heart in conflict with itself, the human heart is not binary. It's not right or wrong. There's different ways to interpret it. And so I feel like fiction should be that way, which means that an author would need to take a step back. They would still have, authority, quote unquote, over having kind of like the best view of the fiction because they wrote it, right? But I think it is important for an author to be like, you know what? No, I can allow these different interpretations to arise. And I'm not going to say what can or cannot be. And finally, Dylan Anderson asks, what's your favorite flavor of crisps? So I'm guessing that's potato chips, unless I'm completely wrong. It's barbecue. Although there's like this Hawaiian sweet onion flavor that grosses out so many people, but I just absolutely love. I'm a sucker for Hawaiian food in general, but it's between barbecue. If you're talking about chips, barbecue, and that's Hawaiian sweet onion. And that's it. That's the whole AMA. This video was way longer than I thought it would be, but I guess it's good because I haven't been uploading. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Continue to ask me questions. I'll try to be able to get to them in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. And I look forward to the next time. Thanks.